Before the video begins, I'd like to ask you to never visit the places I'll talk about in the video. I've prepared 5 terrifying stories about abandoned buildings for you. These nightmares aren't fiction, but real places, prisons, mental hospitals, and old houses. If you're brave enough to watch the video to the end, I'll ask you a question. Good luck. On a freezing January night in 2019, a security guard stationed at Waverly Hills Sanatorium watched his monitor go black. When the feed returned 30 seconds later, a figure stood at the mouth of the body chute tunnel where no one should have been. He radioed his partner. No one had entered the building, but the figure didn't move. It just stood there, facing the camera, as if it had been waiting for decades to finally be seen. Waverly Hills Sanatorium rises like a decaying monument on a hill overlooking Louisville, Kentucky. Built in 1910, it was designed to house tuberculosis patients during one of the deadliest epidemics in American history. At its peak, the hospital held over 400 patients in conditions that grew increasingly desperate. The death toll was staggering. Some estimates suggest more than 60,000 people died within its walls. To prevent panic and maintain morale, hospital administrators constructed a tunnel beneath the building. It was officially called a supply route, but staff knew its real purpose: to remove bodies without the living patients ever seeing them. They called it the body chute. The hospital closed in 1961, but the building never truly emptied. Over the decades, security guards, urban explorers, and paranormal investigators have reported the same phenomena, repeating in cycles. Doors in sealed wings slam with such force they echo through 5 floors. The sound of metal gurneys rolling across tile floors reverberates through corridors where no gurneys remain. Witnesses describe shadow figures tall, human-shaped, moving against the light, always at the edges of vision. They appear most often near room 502, where 2 nurses allegedly died under mysterious circumstances. But it's the body chute where the activity reaches its peak. The tunnel runs 500 feet down the hill, damp and lightless. Those who enter report an immediate sensation of being followed. Footsteps echo behind them, matching their pace exactly. Some claim to hear breathing close, rhythmic, as though something is walking just over their shoulder. In 2017, a team of investigators set up motion-activated cameras along the chute's full length. Every camera triggered within a 2-minute span, starting at the top and moving sequentially downward, as if something was descending the tunnel step by step. But the footage showed nothing, just empty darkness and the faint sound of scraping metal. One investigator, a woman named Carla, described her experience in the 4th floor surgical wing. She had been standing alone in a corridor when she heard a door creak open behind her. She turned and saw nothing, but the air temperature dropped so suddenly her breath misted in front of her face. Then she heard it, a low, rattling exhale, like someone struggling to breathe through fluid-filled lungs. She ran. When she reviewed her audio recorder later, beneath her footsteps, there was a second set, heavier, slower, deliberate. Security staff no longer patrolled the building alone after dark. The head of security admitted in an interview that the building responds to people. Lights flicker in patterns, doors open in sequence, and always, there are the shadows standing motionless at the end of hallways, watching. Waverly Hills still stands, partially open for tours and paranormal investigations, but even the owners acknowledge there are areas they won't enter. The body chute remains the most active zone, where equipment fails, cameras glitch, and people leave faster than they arrived. Some say the dead never left because they were never given a chance to rest. Others believe the sheer weight of suffering imprinted itself into the building's bones. Either way, Waverly remembers, and something inside still watches those who dare to return. This is frightening because it suggests that places of mass death don't simply become empty. They become occupied by what remains. In October 2016, a former guard named Derek was leading a private tour through Eastern State Penitentiary when he stopped cold in the middle of cell block 12. His face went pale. The tourists asked if he was okay. He didn't answer. He just stared into an empty cell and whispered, "That's not possible. I locked that door myself 30 years ago." The door was open. The lock was still bolted from the outside. Eastern State Penitentiary was once hailed as the future of incarceration. When it opened in 1829 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, its design was revolutionary. A massive stone fortress with individual cells radiating from a central hub, each with its own skylight to allow prisoners a glimpse of heaven. But isolation drove men insane. Prisoners spent years in complete silence, alone in stone cells, forbidden from speaking or seeing another human face. Many broke, some never recovered. The prison closed in 1971, but the stone walls remember everything. Cell Block 12 is the most notorious section. It sits at the far end of the complex, partially collapsed, with rusted iron doors hanging from broken hinges. The air there feels different, thicker, colder, even in the middle of summer. Tour guides avoid it when possible. Those who do venture inside report the same phenomena. Disembodied voices whispering names, always just barely audible. Footsteps echoing from empty corridors. And worst of all, the sensation of being watched by something that doesn't want you there. Derek had worked at Eastern State for over a decade before it became a historic site. He knew every cell, every corridor. But even he refused to go into cell block 12 after dark. He once told a colleague about an experience he had in the early 1980s, when the building was still abandoned and forgotten. He'd been checking the perimeter when he heard singing a low, mournful hymn echoing from deep inside the block. He followed the sound to cell 136. The singing stopped the moment he reached the doorway. Inside, scratched into the wall in jagged letters, were the words, "Still here." Modern visitors report nearly identical experiences. In 2018, a woman named Monica entered cell block 12 during a daytime tour. She felt fine at first, walking slowly down the main corridor. But as she approached cell 142, a wave of nausea hit her, so suddenly she had to brace herself against the wall. Then came the panic, primal terror with no clear source. She described it as feeling like something was standing directly behind her, leaning in close, breathing on her neck. She turned and saw nothing. But the feeling didn't stop until she left the block entirely. Security cameras installed throughout the prison have captured unexplained phenomena. Shadows moving across walls where no one stands. Orbs of light drifting through sealed cells. In one incident, footage from cell block 12 showed a door slamming shut with such force that dust exploded from the frame, but no one was near it. When staff reviewed the footage, they noticed something else. Just before the door slammed, a shadow passed in front of the camera. It was tall, humanoid, and moving against the direction of the light source. Former inmates, now elderly, have shared stories that guards tried to suppress for years. They speak of the man in cell 136, a presence that would scratch at the walls at night and whisper threats through the iron door. Some claim to see his shadow moving beneath the door gap, pacing endlessly. No official record exists of who occupied that cell or why it was permanently sealed in 1963. Eastern State Penitentiary remains open for tours, but cell block 12 is roped off from public access. The official reason is structural instability, but staff privately admit there's another reason. People don't come back the same. Some leave crying, others refuse to speak. One investigator who spent a night there described hearing his own name whispered from a cell behind him in his father's voice. His father had been dead for 12 years. Eastern State may have closed its doors decades ago, but whatever lived in its isolation still paces those cells, still whispers, still waits. This is frightening because isolation doesn't just break the living, it traps them, even after death. In the summer of 2012, a family moved into a remote farmhouse outside Hinsdale, New York, hoping for peace and quiet. On their third night, their 6-year-old daughter came downstairs crying. She said the man in the hallway told her to go back to bed. There was no man. But when her father checked the hallway, he found wet footprints leading from her bedroom door to the top of the stairs. No one in the house had wet feet, and it hadn't rained in days. The Hinsdale House sits alone on a stretch of land surrounded by dense woods in western New York. It's a modest 2-story farmhouse, unremarkable from the outside, but locals know its reputation. For decades, families have moved in and fled within months. Some leave without explanation. Others speak only in whispers about what happened inside. The house has been investigated by dozens of paranormal teams, and nearly all of them agree. Something in the Hinsdale House doesn't want to be ignored. The Dandy family lived there for 4 years in the 1970s. They were the first to publicly document the activity. It started small, objects moving on their own, doors opening after being locked, footsteps in empty rooms. But it escalated. Clara Dandy reported hearing voices mimicking her husband's, calling her name from different rooms when he wasn't home. Their children saw figures standing at the ends of hallways, tall, featureless shadows that never moved, only watched. One night, Clara woke to the sound of her son screaming. She ran to his room and found him pressed against the wall, staring at the closet. He said a man had stepped out of it and told him to stay quiet. The closet door was still open. No one was inside. Paranormal investigators who've entered the house describe a consistent pattern. The activity begins subtly. Cold spots, electronic devices draining instantly, the sensation of being watched. But the longer someone stays, the more aggressive it becomes. Objects are thrown. Voices shout from empty rooms. Investigators have recorded EVP's electronic voice phenomena that include growls, screams, and phrases like "get out" spoken in multiple overlapping voices. One team recorded the sound of heavy furniture being dragged across the second floor. When they investigated, nothing had moved, but deep scratches had appeared on the hardwood, as if something had clawed its way across the room. One of the most disturbing reports comes from a man named Paul, who stayed overnight in the house in 2009. He set up cameras in every room and prepared to document whatever happened. Around 2 a.m., he heard footsteps above him, pacing back and forth. He went upstairs with his flashlight. The hallway was empty, but as he stood there, he heard breathing low, raspy, coming from directly behind him. He spun around. Nothing. Then his flashlight died. In the darkness, he heard a voice whisper his name, close enough that he felt breath on his ear. He ran. When he reviewed his footage the next day, the camera aimed at the hallway showed a shadow figure, standing exactly where he had been seconds after he left the frame. The most chilling detail is this. The land itself has a dark history. Before the house was built, the area was reportedly used for unknown rituals by settlers in the 1800s. Some researchers believe the house was built on a cursed site, and that whatever resides there isn't tied to the building, it's tied to the ground beneath it. The Hinsdale House still stands, though it remains largely unoccupied. A few paranormal teams conduct investigations each year, but most leave shaken and unwilling to return. The owners no longer live there full-time. They've admitted in interviews that the house pushes people out. It doesn't harm, at least not physically, but it makes you feel unwelcome in a way that goes beyond fear. It watches, it listens, and it remembers everyone who enters. Some believe the house itself is alive. Others think something far older has claimed it. Either way, those who've been inside agree on one thing. You're never alone in the Hinsdale House. You're just not wanted. This is frightening because it suggests that some places are claimed by forces that see us as intruders and they want us gone. In 2014, a documentary crew filming near Venice hired a boat to circle Poveglia Island, a place locals refused to visit, as they filmed the crumbling asylum from the water. One crew member noticed movement in the bell tower shadow shifting behind the broken windows. They zoomed in. The shadow moved again. Then, faintly, they heard it. The sound of a bell ringing, even though the bell had been removed decades ago. What happened here all those years ago will shock you. Poveglia Island sits in the Venetian Lagoon, a small patch of land barely visible from the mainland. It's forbidden to visit. The Italian government has barricaded access and patrols the waters to keep people away. But the island's reputation ensures that few would dare approach even if they could. For centuries, Poveglia has been a place of death. During the bubonic plague in the 1700s, it was used as a quarantine zone. The infected were taken there to die, their bodies burned in mass pyres. Later, it became a dumping ground for plague victims, thousands upon thousands, until the soil itself turned black with ash. In the 1920s, a mental asylum was built on the island. It operated for decades, isolated and forgotten. Then, in 1968, it closed abruptly. No official records explain why. The legend of Poveglia centers on a doctor who worked at the asylum. According to local accounts, he became obsessed with curing his patients through experimental surgery lobotomies performed, without anesthesia, conducted in a makeshift operating room in the bell tower. Patients reportedly screamed so loudly that fishermen on the mainland could hear them across the water. But the doctor didn't stop. He believed he was doing good work. Then, one night, he climbed to the top of the bell tower and threw himself from the window. Some say he went mad. Others believe something on the island drove him to it. Witnesses claim that as he fell, the asylum bell rang on its own, even though no one had touched it. Modern visitors, those who've managed to reach the island, illegally report experiences that align disturbingly well with the legends. The asylum still stands, though nature has begun to reclaim it. Vines crawl through broken windows. The walls are stained with mold and decay. But inside, the air feels wrong. Cold, even in summer. Heavy, as if the building itself is exhaling something toxic. People report hearing footsteps echoing from upper floors, doors creaking open in windowless rooms, and worst of all, voices screaming, pleading, begging in Italian. One investigator, an Italian filmmaker named Luca, documented his experience in 2011. He entered the asylum alone with a camera. The first floor seemed abandoned, just crumbling walls and debris. But when he reached the second floor, he heard it. The sound of a bell ringing, faint and distant, as if coming from high above. He followed the sound to the stairwell leading to the bell tower. The stairs were rotted and unstable, but he climbed. At the top, the ringing stopped. He entered the bell tower room and found it empty except for deep scratches carved into the wooden floor, forming words in Italian: "Non andare via." Don't leave. His camera battery died instantly. He fled the island and has refused to return. Locals believe the souls of plague victims and asylum patients are trapped on Poveglia. Unable to leave the cursed ground, fishermen refuse to anchor near the island, claiming their nets pull up human bones. Some say that at night, if you stand on the shore of Venice and listen carefully, you can still hear the bell ringing from across the water, even though the bell was removed and melted down decades ago. Poveglia Island remains abandoned and off limits. The Italian government has considered selling it multiple times, but no buyer has ever completed a purchase. Those who visit in secret leave quickly, and most refuse to speak about what they experienced. The asylum still stands, rotting slowly into the earth, but something inside refuses to decay with it. The bell tower looms over the lagoon like a gravestone, and on certain nights, when the wind is still, people swear they hear it, the faint, hollow ringing of a bell that no longer exists. Some hauntings fade with time, but Poveglia's dead were never given rest, and the island remembers every single one of them. This is frightening because it proves that some places are so soaked in death that they can never be reclaimed, only abandoned. In the summer of 2017, A security guard working the night shift at the old Charleston Jail heard a door slam on the 3rd floor. He checked the security monitors, no motion detected. He radioed his partner. No one was inside. But when he climbed the stairs to investigate, he found cell 19 wide open. The lock was still fastened from the outside. Inside the cell, scratched into the stone wall in fresh marks, were 4 words: "I did not have." The old Charleston Jail looms over Magazine Street in Charleston, South Carolina, like a monument to suffering. Built in 1802, it served as the city's primary detention center for over a century. Pirates awaited trial there. Confederate prisoners rotted in its cells during the Civil War. Murderers spent their final nights in its execution chambers. Over 10,000 people passed through its doors, and many never left. The jail closed in 1939, but those who enter today say it never truly emptied. The jail's architecture is oppressive. Thick stone walls, narrow corridors, barred windows that let in almost no light. Even during the day, the interior feels dim and cold. At night, it becomes something else entirely. Security staff and tour guides report consistent phenomena. Disembodied voices echoing through empty halls, shadow figures pacing the cells, and the sound of chains dragging across stone floors. But it's the 3rd floor where executions took place that carries the most intense activity. Cell 19 has become infamous. It's a small, windowless cell near the old gallows room. In the 1800s, prisoners sentenced to death were held there for their final hours. Many scratched messages into the walls, prayers, names, curses. But according to records, one man named Josiah refused to accept his sentence. He was convicted of murder, though he maintained his innocence until the moment the noose was placed around his neck. Witnesses reported that he didn't die immediately when the trap door opened. He struggled for nearly 3 minutes before finally going still. His body was buried in an unmarked grave on the jail grounds. But his cell, cell 19, has never been quiet since. Tour workers describe an unsettling pattern. When they lead groups past cell 19, the temperature drops sharply, sometimes by 20 degrees, in a matter of seconds. Electronic devices fail. Cameras shut off. Cell phones drain completely. But more disturbing is the sensation people report. An overwhelming feeling of being watched, as if someone is standing just inside the cell, inches from the bars, staring out. One investigator, a woman named Rachel, spent a night in the jail in 2019 as part of a paranormal research project. She set up recording equipment on the 3rd floor and waited. Around midnight, she heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate, moving down the corridor toward her. She called out, asking if anyone was there. The footsteps stopped. Then she heard it. A low, rasping voice, speaking directly into her recorder. They were wrong. She grabbed her equipment and left immediately. When she reviewed the audio later, beneath her own voice, there was a second voice, clearer this time, repeating the same phrase over and over. They were wrong. They were wrong. They were wrong. Security footage has captured equally disturbing incidents. In one video from 2018, a shadowy figure is seen moving across the 3rd floor hallway. It pauses at cell 19, appears to reach toward the bars, then vanishes. The timestamp shows 3:17 a.m., the exact time Josiah was executed in 1886. According to historical records, former guards who worked at the jail before it became a museum have their own stories. One man, now retired, admitted in an interview that he once saw a figure standing in cell 19 during a late-night patrol. The figure was tall, gaunt, dressed in ragged clothing. It turned toward him, and for a moment, their eyes met. Then it stepped backward into the darkness of the cell and disappeared. The guard quit 2 weeks later. He never went back inside. The old Charleston Jail remains a popular historic site, offering tours and overnight paranormal investigations. But even the staff acknowledge that certain areas feel wrong. Cell 19 is never used for private events. The 3rd floor is avoided after dark when possible, and every so often, Someone reports the same experience, standing in front of that cell and hearing a voice whisper from the shadows, "I did not hang." Josiah may have died in 1886, but something of him remains angry, restless, refusing to be forgotten. Some executions end a life, but in the old Charleston Jail, some executions only begin a haunting, and the jail itself remembers every injustice, every scream, every soul that died within its walls. This is frightening because it suggests that the wrongfully condemned never find peace. They remain trapped in the place of their suffering, eternally protesting their innocence. So, which one of these haunted asylums and prisons terrified you the most? Was it the body chute at Waverly Hills, where shadows still descend in the darkness? The suffocating isolation of Eastern State Cell Block 12? The cursed hallways of the Hinsdale House? The plague-soaked nightmare of Poveglia Island? Or the wrongfully executed prisoner still protesting in Charleston Jail? Drop a comment below and let me know which location you'd never dare to enter, and more importantly, which one you think is truly haunted. If you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe for more true horror stories from the darkest corners of the world. And here's a question for you. If you had to spend one night alone in any of these 5 locations, which would you choose and why? Answer in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. Thanks for watching. And remember, some doors should never be opened, some places should never be entered, and some souls never leave.